Hello, everybody. It's Phil Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat. It's Saturday, the 27th of March, 2021. Click on the subscribe button below the YouTube frame here and the notification bell in the upper right to be notified of future episodes. Today, I'm going to talk about some racist Midwestern icons during the antebellum and Civil War era. So let me just start with, I'll share a screen here to show you one of them. This is Republican Senator Lyman Trumbull, who was a Republican senator from Illinois when Lincoln was president. He served with Stephen A. Douglas in the beginning of the Civil War, and Stephen A. Douglas was the Democrat who beat Lincoln for the senatorial race in 1858. So if Lincoln had won that election against Douglas, he would have been the junior senator to Senator Lyman Trumbull. Lyman Trumbull unequivocally stated that he felt that the Republican Party was for whites, was for free whites. So let's get started, and I'll pull up my notes and get into this. Although today's race-obsessed cancel culture eagerly destroys Southern icons, statue critics should also examine Northern racism in order to avoid hypocrisy. Yeah, that'll be the day. While recent Civil War Chat episodes discuss examples of Northern racist icons such as William T. Sherman, William Seward, today's episode focuses on Midwestern racism generally during that period. During his 1831 to 32 American tour, French nobleman Alexis de Tocqueville found racial prejudice to be, quote, stronger in the states where they have abolished slavery than where it still existed, and nowhere stronger than in those states where servitude has never been known, close quote. Among the Midwestern states and territories he visited that never had slavery were Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio. As shall be discussed, the situation was much the same in the states and territories of Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota. Consider Lincoln's home state of Illinois. When Lincoln was 21 years old in 1830, 1.6% of the state's population was black. When he ran for president 30 years later in 1860, blacks comprised only 0.4% of Illinois residents. As a territory in 1813, Illinois outlawed, quote, incoming free blacks, close quote. Any that did arrive could be punished with 39 lashes every 15 days until they left. By 1829, the prohibition was relaxed, but free blacks seeking to enter the state had to post a $1,000 bond with proof of freedom. In 1848, Illinois voters approved black exclusion laws intended to exclude blacks from the state by a 4-to-1 margin. In 1853, the state passed a law that would penalize anyone bringing a free black into the state with a fine of up to $500 and up to a year in jail. In 1859, Senator Lyman Trumbull of Illinois, and his statue is in the state capitol at Springfield, Illinois, he opposed giving equal rights to blacks. Quote, we, the Republican Party, are the white man's party. We are for the free white man, close quote. 3 years later, during a Senate discussion concerning wartime slave confiscation, which would free the blacks, he said, quote, Illinoisans want nothing to do with the Negro. They ask, what will we do with them? We do not want them set free to come among us. Other Illinois politicians agreed. Although Republican Congressman Owen Lovejoy opposed slavery, he believed blacks to be endemically inferior and felt that America was meant exclusively for whites. Since the state's wartime governor, Richard Yates, believed that blacks could never compete effectively with whites in the Northern economy, he considered emancipation as a way to rid the North of blacks. The blacks would, he argued, migrate to the South where their skills suited the region's economy. A month after Trumbull's Senate remarks noted earlier, Lincoln's hometown newspaper and frequent media mouthpiece, Springfield's Illinois State Journal, wrote, quote, the truth is the N-word is an unpopular institution in the free states. Even those who are unwilling to rob them of all their rights of humanity, do not care to be brought into close contact with inwards. Now, we confess that we have this in common with 95% of our people against the inward, plural. In August 1861, the Republican loyal Chicago Tribune wrote, quote, "The great ally of the slaveholders in this country is the apprehension in the northern mind that if the slaves were liberated, they would become roaming, vicious vagabonds that would overrun the North. And from the day they were made free, they would cease to work," close quote. After Union armies captured plantations along the lower Mississippi River Valley during the war, Lincoln's war secretary authorized commanders to transfer some of the ex-slaves upriver to Illinois and elsewhere. In September 1862, the citizens of Pike County, Illinois, forced back a refugee train, forced it to turn back. Chicago's mayor refused to set up a committee to help resettle the slaves. Governor Yates was reported to have said, quote, "The scattering of those black throngs should not be allowed if it can be avoided. The mingling of blacks among us means we shall always have trouble," close quote. The feelings in Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Iowa, and Wisconsin were similar. Ohio Senator Ben Wade, abolitionist, co-sponsor of the anti-Lincoln 1864 Wade-Davis Manifesto, and post-bellum advocate of black suffrage, personally loathed blacks. In 1863, he remarked, quote, "If we are to have no more slave states, what are we to do with the excess inwards?" Close quote. 12 years earlier, he had described Washington as a, quote, God-forsaken inward-ridden place, close quote. 8 years after the war, he sought to hire a white servant because he was, quote, sick and tired of inwards, close quote. Wade's companion Republican senator and brother to General William T. Sherman, that would be Senator John Sherman, said that Ohioans were quote, opposed to having many Negroes among them, close quote. He added that blacks in general, quote, were spurned and hated all over the country, north and south, close quote, and spoke of the immutable, quote, law of God, that whites and blacks, quote, law of God, that whites and blacks will always be separate, or where they are brought together, one will be inferior to the other, close quote. In 1852, he argued that an emancipation bill at that time, under consideration, would have triggered black migration northward and, quote, would have made southern Ohio uninhabitable, close quote, to whites. In 1862, the Cincinnati Enquirer editorialized that wartime confiscation of slaves, meaning freedom for them, would cause, quote, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of slaves to come north and west, close quote, where they would either replace white laborers or, quote, have to be supported as paupers and criminals at public expense. Lincoln's Treasury Secretary, Ohioan Salmon Chase, urged that Union General Benjamin Butler emancipate the slaves in his district after the general had occupied New Orleans. Chase's motivation was not altruistic. He expected that northern blacks would migrate towards the southern climate. Soon after the war ended, Ohio elected General Jacob Cox as their governor to serve from 1866 to 1868. Although he had been somewhat supportive of abolitionist goals prior to the war, he adamantly opposed granting African Americans the right to vote. He also advocated separating whites and African Americans in the South by putting former slaves onto reservations. Wisconsin Republican Senator James R. Doolittle agreed and proposed that Southern blacks be colonized to Florida. He argued that free blacks should be colonized to, quote, keep our Anglo-Saxon institutions and Anglo-Saxon blood pure and uncontaminated, close quote. During Governor Cox's term, Ohioans revoked their support of the 14th Amendment, which sought to give African Americans equal protection under the law. Ohioans also rejected a statewide referendum intended to give African Americans the right to vote in that state. Even as Midwestern states were discouraging black settlement, they actively recruited white European immigrants. Wisconsin law placed an immigration commissioner in New York City in 1852. Iowa followed suit with a similar law in 1860. As a result, white immigration to Wisconsin surged from Ireland, Germany, and Norway. There was never an attempt to entice blacks from the South. Wisconsin never made an attempt to recruit blacks from the South. Michigan Republican Senator Jacob Howard opined that free slaves, quote, ought to be created as equals before the law, close quote, only after he realized that blacks would be contained in the South. In 1862, he was outraged to learn of a relocation plan for 123,000 refugee blacks to his state of Michigan. In 1858, Indiana Republican Congressman George Julian admitted, quote, our people hate the Negro with a perfect, if not supreme hatred, close quote. Indiana's 1851 Constitution, only 10 years before the Civil War, prohibited blacks from entering or settling in the state. Like other Midwesterners, Julian favored black suffrage in the South because he believed it would rid the northern states of blacks. Republican Indiana Congressman Albert S. White said, quote, the Anglo-Saxon will never give his consent that the Negroes shall be elevated to equality, close quote. As Alexis de Tocqueville averred, the historical evidence suggests that American racial prejudice was most virulent in the states that had never had slavery. One need only consider that blacks comprised about 1% of the population of such states as compared to 40% in the 11 Confederate states. Well, I think that pretty much says it. I would like to, for those of you that would like to learn more about the hypocrisy in the North regarding blacks, the attitude towards blacks during Reconstruction, I recommend Southern Reconstruction by me, Philip Lee. You can get it at Barnes & Noble and Amazon for $22. If you would like to get a signed autographed copy from me at $25, email me, Phil, P-H-I-L _Lee, L-E-I-G-H at me.com. If you're in the United States, I will cover the postage, and that's $25 for this. Okay, that's our show for today, and thanks for watching.